I'm really into my torque patterns. A real skeletal system is like $1,300, and I'm really into trying to charge as least amount of money as I can. So they make these really good skeletal systems that are plastic, but I'm so concerned by getting an artificial skeletal system that it's going to take away the premises of what I'm trying to say, because even though a skeletal system obviously is a dead human being and there's no muscles and stuff, and you still have hardware through it, so it's going to throw the torque anyway. Until I actually feel it, I'm just really concerned that the plastic is just not going to respond to the touch like a bone would.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's being completely like too OCD over the matter, or I should just wing it. But
No,
a plastic
makes sense.
skeletal system is like $250. You can get them off of Amazon. So I still would really like a real skeletal system.
You just want that for to show?
To show you guys and to show, you know, I'm going to show my trusty little iPad here. One of the things is with the iPad, you can spin these suckers, but they're completely lateral.
Right.
There's no, I cannot torque this sucker. I don't understand when they design these patterns. Again, it should be pretty easy, but again, most people don't think about movement in the skeletal system whatsoever.
I know.
So when you look at any examples of the skeletal system too, or the human being, like if you look, like they show running and stuff, it's like the pelvis doesn't torque, it's just, you know, these legs, it's just a weird, then they're going like this running, they're not, you know, there's none of this, or there's no patternings.
Yeah, it's like a fixed point instead of those changing points.
And also when they really look at the perfect way a human walks, it's how straight someone can, you know, there's no, nobody's looking about the gait. So I'm doing the hand, and then I'll pass this around. The hand, I just think is brilliant. The metatarsals and in the foot, the metatarsals have that very similar properties. They are placed so close together, all of these fine bones, and that it branches off of. The habitual contractions that could happen in these areas of both the hand and the foot, it's just unbelievable, because you've fallen as a baby, you've fallen as a kid, so the quote jamming, the this, that, and the other, and also I'm going to just quickly show you now the ligaments, and again I'll pass this around so you can see it. So here's the first layer. So the first layers, it's like these little shoelaces that come in to start not only buffering the bones, but to start attaching them. So we were specifically attached a certain way. Whoever designed this, I go by God, but whatever, you know, we were so designed. I mean, that's just brilliant work. You can't tell me when you're cutting into that wrist that a grown doctor is going to recreate this kind of, I mean, I'm not saying never get surgery, but if you're doing surgery for mobility issues, carpal tunnel and all of this, you're crazy. Versus at least trying someone like me first. So now here's the second layers that they're getting into. And again, it's still about protecting, but notice it's still allowing the movement, you know? Like this ligament, you know, it's coming across, and yes, I can get technical to names, it's not about that. I'm looking at just the pattern. Notice how it's all attached across the wrist, but it's not done in a so tight. I mean, it's allowing all of these, this flexibility, this movement patterns that should be delicate, you know. Why can this hand wield the hammer as well as a scalpel or a paintbrush? You know, it's the same process. So, and here's the next layer. And again, notice it's much more protected. But now you can see, again, all the finites. It almost looks like Dr. Frankenstein sewing up, you know. It's, notice how symmetry really goes out the window. So we can take these off. And again, even with the bones, even though they're there, you know, it's almost like landlines through water, you know, versus, I mean, there's no straight lines in nature. So, but again, what I can't show you in here, oh, when I do the ligaments too. Notice too, between the ulna and the radius, it starts to get connected to slow down as one bone. So there's a sheeting that goes on visceral to start connecting the two together. So even though they are two separate bones, you really want to look at that as they are together. So
I'm just touching and saying word.
well, the only way you learn is by touch. So can you bring it down?
Zoom in.
At this point, just do my hand.
Okay. There you go.
So one of the things that people don't realize, just like I'm leaning here on my leg and stuff, is when I work on someone, I don't fix myself. You don't see my hands like this. Honestly, when I'm under someone's head, I'm telling you, and people go, how much? This is how finite I'm touching underneath someone's head. So if they were lying here, I'm registering that much touch, and I'm just seeing what can happen. Now, each finger, again, just in the mathematics, like I just showed you with the hand, this finger, the way it's situated in my hand, will take torque, acceleration, gravity, all of that in someone's head at a different movement pattern than this finger. So it's really quite brilliant how my brain can operate to take the movement patterns that I feel over here of torque and acceleration versus here or here. So usually if I'm working like this, I'll distribute the weight between the fingers, mainly going up through this middle one here. This finger tending to be way too pokey. But again, it's a vessel, it's there. So if I go underneath, like someone's scapula or the shoulder blades there, like they call my pizza hand, you know, then I'm more spread out here. And then I might put more of the effort through here or through here. But the more that my hand can move, the more that that the movement can go through my hand, through someone else's head. So again, you know, and again, if it's a heavy person, and I don't mean heavy weight-wise, I've lifted some heads because, however they're organized, they weigh big, more than a 16-pound bowling ball. I mean, literally, at that point, I have to take two hands to lift it off the table versus because I can't get that finesse or whatever until the head gets more organized off the spine. But again, that's a whole nother conversation. So but the whole time here, to get these kind of skills, I'm leaning off my leg. I'm letting my system to support through the system so I can allow the quickness. If I was here, I don't have the subtleties where my hand's coming off my leg as I would here. So to do that, even when you're working on yourself, and you can really quite nicely do this, you don't want to do it here versus supporting. Now you guys are doing it just off the arm of the chair, but to support your system, and this is the one thing too when I talk about working with anyone, the vestibular, their sense of balance, the relationship of gravity, all of that, the more you support it in a way that they understand gravity, and I mean a client or my other hand. So if I'm like this and I'm trying to, you know, that's a completely different movement and results than if I'm here. I'm allowing my hand to be in a certain position that, and again, see, I'm just doing these very easy movements and bringing my hand around. I'm specifically, in this case, rounding the fingers because I'm allowing the back of the hand to move. And again, if you think this is just So what? So why is she doing this? Talk to someone who's had a stroke. And they'd give their good hand to get the bad hand to do this. It's just, and then again, I'm using that as an example. So if you don't think that the hand's remarkable, people would give just for movement of the function of a pinky, much less all 5 fingers. It's a very underappreciated life skill that we have, and you don't realize that you have it until you don't have it. So here I'm coming in, and again, the hands are built so nicely. They come into one another. I had this little boy, and I so wish this on film. He had left side paralysis, and when he was like, wow, and the hand finally, quote, released, or however you want to look at it, it was like, and that's exactly what he was doing, just like in the movie Look Who's Talking. His brain was like, damn, the same thing's on the other end. He just was like, I've got 5 fingers. And so, very purposefully, instead of me doing a hand over hand, I'd come back to the upper arm, but I joined the 2 hands together. Not only am I looking to achieve midline, that's great and all, but allowing that. And this is exactly what I was doing with him, is just that intertwining. Our hands are very purposeful that way. Young kids only hold hands like this. You actually have to worry about your child getting sexually active when this starts to happen with the relationship, because you're now being intimate with that person. So versus here, and you'll see that young kids, they'll grab you just like that. It's very awkward for a young kid, if you purposely, like let's say if I'm working on the hand and I go like that's very intimate.
Yeah.
So watch your daughters if they're starting to. Boys too, don't need to be. So, and you can see how I'm allowing the hands to go together. What's nice about doing something like this, right here, I have to stop. I'm jammed into position. I can't go further. Now if I drop the thumb down or change the movement, but it's really important when you start to work with anyone, when this hand stops, this hand stops. So you might look at it when the movement in their pelvis stops versus their scapula, if that's where you're working on. But it's the same thing vice versa. You see me talking. The right hand goes up, the left hand goes down, vice versa. So there's a conversation there, but as soon as my right hand or left hand stops, whichever the rotation, I could go further, but now this is a force. And I don't, there's nothing in my touch that I force. So it's the same thing whether I work on me, but again, by respecting my own gravity, then my sense of wonder of what could or not be accomplished during that session is open to that. The more I'm rigid and just doing this, I can't get the results that I'm looking for. And also I find if you're really pushing your muscles this way or your system, then you are looking for results. Oh, why am I not getting it? Whereas this, when you're all relaxed, okay, la-di-da. When I have the psyche, now right there, it's very subtle. See as I rotate, not only does the reflex patterns change, but I'm getting the extension in the hand. By the way, I'm going to do this to you, so don't feel if any of you are, quote, not getting it. I should be able to reach my hand, reach for. A lot of people just have this. There's no extension through the hand. Now there should be extension through the whole arm, through the back. I get that. But let me tell you, if it's not happening in the hand, most likely, quote, the shoulder is jammed or has articulated because either shoulder is overcompensating because of lack of extension in the hand, or the shoulder doesn't have it either, or, that just makes me, people go, well, why'd you go from this to that? Well, that's one of my arguments. Even if I don't see it here, or I can't get it to, quote, happen here, like I'll try a couple of times. If I don't see it happen, I go, okay. And I go on to another spot. Or if I can't go down, What about going up?
Yeah.
So this is just the Ken and Barbie hand, you know, that open and,
I'm gonna interrupt you, but when I was working with Ruby last week, and I sent you those pictures, we were working on her shoulders, and she kept, I noticed that she was having trouble responding on her right side, and I kept coming back down and working, coming down here, and then I kept coming down, and I kept having to come down to the hand. And once we got the wrist and the hand working, it started to loosen up, and we started to get more, just like yours said. So
yeah. Like right now, even if I tighten, let's say the pinky of the hand that's not affected, look at the movement. If I let my pinky go, look at the movement, you know. Or I can, I'll curl my toes on my right foot. See, it's just,
yeah.
if I let the foot go, it's just a different movement. It's just, the brain doesn't look at our bodies at parts. It's a complete system. So if part of the system is affected, then part of the rest of the system is affected. It's like one day having the alphabets without XYZ. Might think, oh, okay, big deal. Well, you try and talk all day long without specifically using those letters. You'll have to think about every word coming out of your mouth, not to use XYZ. Now, it's easier to say, like, oh gosh, now I'm old compared to you guys. Fat Albert used to do these, So you used to try and talk like the B guy. And you had to, it's easier to add than subtract. So, but movement in my book is more like subtraction. So the more that you do not have, and again, let's say if I only finished the 3rd grade, well, I'm going to speak and act at a certain level. Now, some kids are more advanced because of the influence of the home. I get that. However, if that child is not allowed to continue their education, the brain will start to suffer because of the lack of advancements, and you'll see that. So emotionally as an adult, when they don't get the proper education, and that's what education is all about, it's opportunities for the brain to continue to grow. Our brain is not meant to stop growing at the 3rd grade level. That's why we're not sexually mature, hopefully, until more like we're in our 20s, really. Some people not until their 40s or ever. But we're not sexually mature at 2 years old like an animal would be. Most animals are, having their own family by the age of 2, or are capable of having, Yes, some are younger or whatever, you can argue that point, but, I'm being general here, folks. But, so, and notice also, too, I'm talking this whole time, I haven't stopped working on my hand. And I'm just being random. Yes, I'm being purposeful for myself, like here, I'm now working with cross extension through here. So I'm just feeling where the wrist wants to stop with this movement, but I'm more than capable of talking about your wives, your kids, I can go anywhere mentally because my hands are having a conversation with my hands, and I do not have to, quote, concentrate on what I'm doing. I prefer not to. But when you first start, or you're again more concerned about doing it right, then people concentrate. I'm never concerned about doing it right. I'm just here to explore movement patterns, and when I see movement patterns change, then they change. It's not about doing it right. What do I know what I'm doing for you? And 2, God help us all if you all have to act like I want you to, and that would mean movement. So if someone doesn't finish the 3rd grade, so what it does is it limits their vocabulary of movement. It really does, because mathematics is movement. Science is movement. You're learning different, more complex movement. If you don't understand physics, which is movement, then you're not going to, again, your brain starts to limit in advancement. It's all based off of movement. So if you're restricting a brain from learning, you're restricting them from movement. So when, let's say that they have a complex problem, you can't ask that person to solve what's going on in Afghanistan. It's not that they're not capable, it's just their brain has not played with scenarios. They have not moved to a different level of where they're going. Oh, I didn't even watch, sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't know you flipped it around. So, and again, I'm not faulting that person, faulting the system that a movement pattern hasn't allowed to develop. So when you're doing something like this, and by the way, just from doing this kind of work, would you rather now write a paper with the hand? Now just play with what you've been doing and feel the right hand versus the left hand. Now the left hand will be improving because the left hand's working on the right hand, so you have that conversation going on. But would you now rather write a paper or draw a picture or cook a meal with the hand now that you've got versus what you came in through the door with? So again, it's not always about the ingredients of what you put into the bread. Can I knead differently? Can I do more detailed in baking? Do I have fine motor skills? Can I do a surgery better? Can I do, drive a car better? I'd rather drive a car like this than, So what I'm doing when I'm driving a car, let's say like this, I just have limited options. When I'm like this, everyone can do this, tighten your hands really far. Just try and play with your right foot. Okay, now let your hands go and play with your right foot. So which one's more sensitive to a gas pedal? So if I'm like this too, everyone squeeze this, and now most likely you're going to have to force your right foot down because that's the only option you have. Now turn around and look to see if you've got someone coming over from the right side.
Yeah.
I had this guy who was 87 and he goes, as you can see, I can't turn my head. He goes, so what I do is I put on my indicator and I start going towards that lane, and if nobody beeps at me, because he couldn't turn his head, I gun it. That's what he said, I gun it into that lane and hopes I don't hit someone. And so I'm thinking to myself, yeah, let me know when you're not.
So that's
That sums up Sun City, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is, what it sums up, which is the biggest shame, is people still do what's in their best interest versus in the interest of others. They don't look to improve themselves. Now, if I was driving a car and that was my ability to drive, I hope I'm intelligent enough to say, today's not a good day and we're staying home, or I need to do something about my neck. But to accept life like that is, and to continue like you're an intelligent human being, it's selfish. But however, is it selfish when you don't know that it's selfish?
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where, but at the same time, this is where movement patterns, when I ask you how you're doing, I'm really asking you how you're moving. And if you say, like you started a new job, did I file these paperworks okay? You're really asking that person, did I move okay? We're all functions of movements, Did I get here okay? Did I get here on time? Are all patterns of movement. They're not, it's not an emotional, even you getting dressed in the morning or how you put on your makeup is based off your movement patterns. So if you have a blind spot in your eye, it's going to be harder to put your mascara on or fix your hair, or maybe a level of awareness to even see that you forgot to comb your hair or brush your teeth in the morning, or whatever the patternings might be. So, and it's amazing just working on just the hand, or that you can even work on yourself. So, I don't know, I just find this stuff so interesting. So, but notice now too, if I hold the hand and I can now just turn my wrist patterns. Now again, this is where I've just broken my rules. I'm purposely stopping my left hand, and I'm doing, but what I'm doing is being able, my hand is still so able to move around a fixed point because of all the movement patterns now that are available in my wrist. So, and I can play with the hand in such a pattern now. So mathematically, I just have all that more available to do with my hand that I just didn't have before. Now the question is, will it always stay? Not always. We change, or we have trauma, or we get sick, or if we hit the hand, or we ignore it, or we're holding our cell phone too long, whatever it is. However, when you start to see movement patterns that are possible and they start to slack, that's where our level of awareness goes up, that we can now make changes in our lives to say, hey, my hand's not acting as well as it could. What did I do? Oh yeah, I need to take time and, while I'm watching TV tonight, just work on my hand a little bit. Great. Versus, I get people with the whole carpal tunnel and yada yada, and they go, well, what could you possibly, or arthritis. I have arthritis. What could you possibly do? What could I not do? And why not at least try? Am I going to get your hand maybe as supple as whatever? If you've never had the movement patterns before, there's a lot more vocabulary that has to put in it. Now, the reason I might respond so quickly is because I already had the movement patterns and I'm just refreshing them. Whereas if someone's never had it, I can see it a lot with the ankles. Like if I tell people, oh, so you never ice skated. And they go, how can you tell? I was horrible or whatever. Well, I don't have the articulation in the ankle now. That means you didn't have it as a kid when you were trying it. Or like when I found it on you, I'm like,
Right.
boy, you throw ball, well, you suck.
No, you said that, and you said I can't skateboard, which is true.
Yeah. Well, there's no way. If your wrist is jammed up or it can't do all of this, there's no way you can skateboard, because this is where I believe that you have a gyro here, you have a gyro in your pelvis and your ankles. So the gyro is not functioning whatsoever in the wrist or that kind of thing. There's no way you have that relationship into the pelvis and then into the ankles. So, and again, I'm not trying to say that as to put a person down. When I told that to you, I knew you as well. But so when I know people, I can check out my hypothesis a bit more than when I don't know someone. I'm not going to say, oh, you can't do this, that, and the other. When I know someone, I can start checking out what my feelings are. And again, my feelings are not important, but at the same time, I'm making my own movement vocabulary when I work on somebody else. So yeah, if you can't do this, and you'll notice it, even if you're a great skateboarder, if you've broken your hand and it's still in the cast, your abilities are just gone. Part of the reason is your body's protecting the cast, even though if they're saying you're very stupid, you've broken your arm, and you should be resting anyway. But also too, when the cast comes off, doesn't mean you suddenly have this instant. And especially, I don't understand it, when you're having a surgery done to, quote, increase mobility. That's an oxymoron. I could totally understand if you've shattered the bone, you have spurs, there are things that are starting to grow into your hand that weren't there before, that need to be cleaned up. But this whole thought of the carpal tunnel and all of that, because I'm telling you, it's your back on top of it, which you're not dealing with. And now you're going to have the scar tissue on top of it, or they're putting in some do the tunnel, so the nerves can run through it. It all depends on the type of surgery you're getting. Now you've got artificial things, but again, the scar tissue is artificial because your brain's not used to it. There's a whole bunch of conversations that can go on. I still would find someone first that can do something like this for at least a couple of lessons, because Ido Porto says it best, although, a lot of people watch his stuff and they go, I can't do that, so there's nothing to learn from him because he's so out of the realm. But if you don't want to move, your body will do that very well. It does not moving very well. You just sit there for a couple of days and your brain will be because your brain will just start regressing. I'm done. You really need to move. If you don't use it, you lose it, period, the end. And I'm not saying when you're 88 you can do this work and you still have maybe the delicacies of being a surgeon. However, you still can appreciate a lifestyle that is different than just clubbing, or, again, do you want to grab a cane like this, or the steering wheel, or, that being able to feel a rose petal, your child's face. There's so many ways to look at it. And the hand is brilliant, and I can get into the whole thing with the hand again. I mentioned it briefly. to this is like having eyes, ears. I mean, there's a level of touch that is different in my hand that is different than on my arm.
Yeah.
There's a level of feeling physics, fulcrum, leverages, gravity, balance, all of this in my fingers that is not available through my knee. But again, because I haven't practiced it. If I didn't have my hands, I'd probably be doing this work with my knees and my heads, and I'd figure it out. But I have such a heightened sensitivity through my hands. I never look at them. You very rarely, except for what we're doing now because it's just so close, very rarely do you actually see me, quote, looking at my hands because I'm competent.
Right.
It's like having 10 people with me at a lesson.
Right. I even know
So.
when it comes to your hands, in your brain, when you have when your brain is focused on more of one sensory area than another, it's actually there's more neurons dedicated to that area. So our hands are one of the biggest. So if you were to draw, they call it a cortical map. Have you ever seen those?
Right.
Yeah, where they draw the size of your body in relation to how much brain is devoted to it. So your hands are the biggest part of your brain.
Yeah, and then it's like your tongue and your feet.
And your feet, yeah, exactly. And so it directly is related to the intelligence of the rest of your...
And also because of that, let's say if your hand was casted,
Yeah.
I can go analogous. Since it's so large in the motor cortex,
Yeah.
I can either work on the left hand and still stimulate the right,
Right.
or I can work on the right foot to stimulate the right hand. I'll take what I can get. Or again with speech, if you have contractions in the tongue or spasticity, you're guaranteed to have spasticity to the hands and the feet. So, and vice versa. So to work on the one does affect the other as far as the brain's concerned. And of course, when you affect the skeletal system, which isn't on that map, it affects everything.
Right.
And that's the whole difference of doing the skeletal system versus muscular base. Because if I'm working on your butt, glutes, I'm not going to affect per se the hands, and all that manner. And also too, I go back to the torque patternings. If you're not affecting that, then you're also not going through the system. So, with that,